Hey, good afternoon to you. 507 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Congressman Michael Cloud will join us. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Let's talk about this White House tax plan, if we can, for a moment. President Trump is announcing today, he was talking to members of Congress today, and Karoline Leavitt came out and just explained that he wants to cut taxes in all sorts of places. And he also wants to cut some loopholes that the very wealthy are using to avoid paying taxes. Kind of fascinating, including some of these billionaire stadium owners who get very sweetheart deals from the federal government. What's going on there? So first and foremost, I want to take you back to what we found out this week from 60 Minutes. The FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, obtained the entire 60 Minutes, the unedited 60 Minutes interview of Kamala Harris from the presidential campaign. And to be very clear about one of the things it reveals, Kamala admits that she would raise taxes in a sequence that never was aired on 60 Minutes, ever. Because the host sitting there is asking her, how are you going to pay for all this stuff? Remember her ridiculous campaign, all the stuff that she was promising, all the stuff that's going to happen. It's going to be so great. We're going to be giving away everything. How are you going to pay for all of it? And at the very end of the interview, as they're shutting the cameras down and the microphones and taking the lights down, one last question comes out. How are you going to pay for it? Listen to this.
How will you?
It's going to be taxes. It's going to be literally, if the economists, I mean, they're from each spectrum.
But I hear what you're saying about the economists. This is true.
Yeah.
But Congress is not the economists.
I know, but
That's it. That's the end. That's the very end of the video. Did you hear the very first thing she said? It's going to be taxes, she says. It's going to be taxes. And then she's babbling at that point. It's the economist and it's like, all right, thanks. That's enough. We don't have to do anything else. But she admitted it there. And so once again, if you're looking for any silver linings in a world that seems to be raining with silver right now, there's another one. There's another one. Kamala Harris is not president of the United States, and she's not raising your taxes. Isn't that great? What a nice little treat. All right, so President Trump's plan includes no tax on tips. He ran on that. No tax on Social Security for seniors. He ran on that. What is that anyway? So you get taxed your whole life. You get Social Security taken out. And then when you get your Social Security check, they once again take money from you? What is this? It's the worst deal I've ever heard of. So no tax on Social Security. No tax on overtime pay. How's that for creating an environment where you can get the most out of American workers and reward them with a lot more money? I'll be interested to see what this means for employers, by the way, how that works too, not just the people who work there, but what it means for the employers. Let's see. They want to renew Donald Trump's 2017 middle-class tax cuts. Yes, that's what we all want. We'd like to keep our taxes low, please, as low as possible. One that is interesting to me, they want to adjust the SALT cap, the state and local tax deduction that's currently set at, I believe it's $10,000, the state and local tax deduction cap, that before it was that you could get away with writing off all sorts of state and local taxes and say, oh, don't count that against my taxable income. I can write that off. And what the right discovered and what President Trump was able to put into practice is that these lefty jurisdictions all across the country, lefty states, were getting away with murder because they were essentially they have out-of-control governments that are way too expensive, and so they have very high taxes as a result. But then rich taxpayers who live in those states would be able to write off their state and local taxes, unlimited, just write it off against their federal taxes. So in other words, you have Americans across the country are subsidizing the profligate spending of these left-wing states. What are we doing? So President Trump, for two reasons, came in and imposed a cap on that. One of them, and the most important, I think, is the principle of we're not paying for your excess spending. You fix your spending and stop having Americans subsidizing it. all across the country. Stop it. So that's great. And two, practically, it made it possible to get the spending levels just right in that package for them to be able to pass it the way they did. So it was some budgetary trickery going on as they had to get that tax cut passed, which is why, by the way, it's about to expire. It's not permanent in the law because of the vehicle that they used in order to make it work in the first place, reconciliation. So the president wants to extend this. He wants to extend this again and renew those middle-class tax cuts, which would be excellent. And he wants to adjust the SALT cap, so we'll see what that looks like. Now, if they're adjusting the SALT cap, it sounds like they're still going to keep some sort of limit. Maybe they'll adjust it upwards a little bit. But we'll see what that looks like in the end. They want to eliminate the special tax breaks for billionaire sports team owners who, by and large, have not been on the side of, sanity. They've been all in on the left. Every stupid left-wing program that comes along, they sign up for. They're writing left-wing propaganda in the end zones on the backs of helmets, and it's crazy. Actually, speaking of stupidity, do you know this weekend at the Super Bowl they're doing 2 national anthems again? Have you heard about this? So why do you do this? Why do you screw with the Super Bowl? Well, the answer is because the left loves taking something that's great and meddling with it for their own ends. We don't have 2 nations. We have one nation under God. We have the United States of America. We are Americans. Your ancestry and the hyphenated nonsense and the color of your skin and the gender, the whole point is to recognize our shared country. That's the whole point of the national anthem. And the fact that we all share in its successes, we all share in its legacy, that we all share in its existence, and that we are proud to live here. That's the whole point. They're doing 2 this weekend. They're going to do what they refer to as the Black National Anthem. This is one of the songs. It's a beautiful song. Let me make no mistake. Lift Every Voice and Sing is a beautiful song. But the idea that we have 2 national anthems is intentionally designed to divide you against your fellow American. It is not designed to provoke a unity, but instead to provoke division. They're out of control. Out of control. The song was, I guess, originally written as a poem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And the first performance of it was done to celebrate Abraham Lincoln's birthday. It was not to divide the country. It was not to establish that we have multiple nations inside of one nation. It was performed to celebrate Abe Lincoln, who fought to, what did he fight to do? To keep the Union together. So isn't that amazing? So now we've reached a point where Lift Every Voice and Sing, a beautiful song, beautiful poem, celebrated, the first performed to celebrate President Abraham Lincoln's birthday, whose legacy is that he fought to end slavery and keep the Union together. Now it's being used as a tool of division. This is the way the left operates. They subvert history, they distort it beyond recognition, and then they use the distorted version that they now present to you as a cudgel in order to divide our country against itself. Great. Thanks for that, guys. Thank you very much. So anyway, I know that the NFL is getting rid of the stupid end racism propaganda, as if there were people who were on the side of racism. There's a huge constituency. It's pro-racism. Yeah, well, there is. It's called the American left, quite unfortunately. That is true. But the message was performance art. It was designed to suggest that some other problem was being addressed, like fixed by writing end racism in the end zone. It's so mindless and useless. But they're apparently getting rid of it in the end zone, but not the multiple national anthems that they're performing. So we're looking at the tax. Let me go back to the taxes now and where we are. So we're eliminating the special tax breaks for billionaire sports team owners in the Trump plan. They're closing the carried interest tax deduction loophole. Closing the carried interest loophole. Now, this is The left has been pretending for years that they want to close this loophole. They say it all the time, but they don't actually mean it because they've got all sorts of donors and friends who are benefiting and enriching themselves dramatically off of it. But just to give you a sense of what this actually is, let me quote from my friend, employer, longtime employer, Neil Patel, wonderful guy. And he wrote a piece a couple years ago, headlined, How Wall Street Still Owns Washington, Even with the Socialists in Charge. That was back when the socialists were running everything. Democrats in Washington are still pushing ahead with plans for their historically astronomical $3.5 trillion spending bill. The massive regulatory and social changes included would push America further to the left than ever before. The reconciliation spending bill, which can be passed with no Republican votes in the House or Senate, includes a ton of tax increases, along with huge new spending increases. The proposal will reportedly raise the individual income tax rates and the corporate income tax rates. According to the most recent news reporting, however, one tax policy is going to make it through the huge left-wing agenda unchanged, the so-called carried interest loophole, special low tax rates for Wall Street money managers. With the left pushing a socialist agenda and many on the right so frustrated that they're ready to burn down the establishment altogether, how was Wall Street able to retain a fundamentally unfair special tax treatment throughout one of the greatest populist moments in American history? He says the answer, of course, is that through all of America's recent travails, Wall Street still runs Washington. And he goes down a huge list of things about how this works. So here's what you need to know. I'm going to fast forward to the part about the carried interest loophole and how it operates. So to understand the issue, it's helpful to go through the policy and the politics. On the policy side, the U.S. taxes capital at lower rates than it taxes labor. So if you make $100,000 working at a job, you will pay a higher rate than if you make $100,000 buying and selling a stock or a building that you held on for over a year. The justification for this disparity is we want to encourage investment in capital. Capital investments in things like new factories or equipment result in long-term economic growth. On the flip side, high taxes on capital disincentivize investors from selling weaker assets to invest in new, hopefully higher income-producing assets. Using the tax code to incentivize behavior this way can be debated, but at least it makes some policy sense. There is zero policy justification for the carried interest loophole. Here's why. Money managers like private equity and hedge fund partners earn a living by charging fees against the funds that investors give them to manage. A huge part of their compensation is the 15 to 20% that they keep of all of their investors' profits. They call this the carried interest. This payment is essentially a performance bonus. It's a form of compensation. Somehow, though, Wall Street has convinced Washington that this compensation shouldn't be taxed as income, but instead at the lower capital gains tax rate. There's no requirement that the partners in these firms invest any of their own capital themselves. Here's the key. This is the distinction he's making. Look, that Neil's making. When you make money on the stock market, for instance, or out of your house or whatever asset you own, if you wait a year to sell it, you get that lower capital gains tax rate, right? Everyone sort of knows this. This is why, like, if you buy a stock today and then sell it tomorrow, you're going to pay the normal income tax rate on it. But if you hold it for a bit, hold it for a year, you get to the long-term capital gains rate. What he's pointing out is you have money managers who are not putting their own assets in. They're using other people's assets in order to get paid. They get paid a fee, and then they're able to have a tax structure that's not income like the rest of us. It's deeply unfair, and it's only built that way because it involves rich people who own Washington. The money managers own these lawmakers, so they get a better deal than you do by going to a 9-to-5. That's what this is. So President Trump, the first person in a long time who has the actual political capital to do something about it, is saying, that's crap. I'm ending it. So President Trump, as a part of this tax plan, ending that carried interest loophole, more in just a moment. I'm enjoying this presidency, let's just to put it lightly. The final thing on that list, tax cuts for American-made products, which is great. Put that in combination with tariffs on other countries and big tax cuts if you make things in America. This is exactly what President Trump ran on. And it would come as a great relief if we can actually get all this achieved. So a good list of things from President Trump today. Let's see here. I've got JT calling in from D.C., line 1. JT, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. I was just wondering about the military. I was once told, or I heard, that the military, if you were honorably discharged, your retirement would not be taxed and your disability would not be taxed. Do you know anything about that? I haven't. I heard the list. I didn't hear anything about it.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear anything or see anything in that list either about the impact on military retirement. I will say that in the past, President Trump did say that he would consider allowing active military personnel, veterans, police officers, and firefighters to claim exempt status on their tax returns. That's been something he's talked about. But look, the other piece, JT, is he straight up said he wanted no federal income tax at one point during the campaign. He thought it'd be good to get rid of it. He wants to go back to the old days where we just got all the revenues out of tariffs, taxes on other countries. I'm with you, though. I think you're right that this is important that we take care of members of the military. I'll continue on this. I've got a lot of thoughts on it. But first, Congressman Michael Cloud will join us next. Stay with us. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Joining us now is Congressman Michael Cloud. He represents Texas's 27th Congressional District. He's the member of the House Appropriations and Oversight Committees as well. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you, Vince.
I understand that you are very busy this week trying to dismantle all of those bigoted DEI practices going on across the country. What are you up to?
Oh, yeah. Well, we have introduced the Dismantle DEI Act. And, of course, we've seen the great work that President Trump's done day one heading into office to get rid of this scourge, really, that's been placed upon the nation and throughout our government. And so what our bill does is really three things. It goes throughout the federal government, closes down these offices, which, of course, President Trump has done, but we got to make sure that it doesn't come back under any other president.
Right.
And then what the Biden administration had tried to do was really force feed this on the American people through the contracting process and through the grant writing process. So, we've seen, for example, all the USAID stuff. A lot of those grants were DEI stuff. Now, that was going overseas, but there's a lot going to educate to universities and the like throughout our country. But then if you're a business wanting to do business with the federal government, they would make your business take on these ridiculous DEI practices in order to be able to get a contract with the government. And this is not what our country's about. These efforts for all the good terminology are discriminatory and not really what this country's built on.
Yeah, no, not at all. Congressman, how do you prevent the left from trying to smuggle this type of bigoted, divisive work in under some other name or try and hide it from your detection?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is obviously something we're going to have to be ever vigilant about, and that's the importance of what we're doing on the Oversight Committee and what you see DOJ doing and looking at receipts and the like. But we define really what it is in the legislation, and so it's important for anything that's looking at race or these other demographic factors over merit, anything that tries to say that one specific class of individual is somehow oppressed over another, and that's the basis for your hiring or training or those kind of things. These divisive leftist ideologies really coming out of Marxism and all those sort of things that they've tried to foist upon us, it defines that, and we counter that. So,
yeah. I love it.
Of course, they're going to keep working. We see them keeping working. Even in the Oversight Committee hearings this week, you think they would have learned the lesson, right?
Yes.
And what we see is them bringing the same sort of mantra and diatribes and that lost them the election that the American people clearly rejected. They're still trying to push that. and it's mind-boggling really at this point, but it just shows you that we're going to have to continue to be vigilant about these things.
One of the things I'm worried about here, Congressman, is even if you were to prevail in passing this law, the Dismantle DEI Act, which sounds excellent, the reality to me is that DEI as it exists is already a violation of the law. The Civil Rights Act was designed to literally outlaw discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, and yet the left doesn't seem to care. They just keep advancing these bigoted programs. What can we do to keep them from violating the law? I mean, could we prosecute people who actually are trampling on these laws that are designed to prevent the very thing that's happening now?
Yeah, we'll need to keep doing that. Obviously, Reagan said, freedom doesn't pass automatically in the bloodstream. It has to be fought for, protected, and passed on to every generation to do the same. And of course, we think of our military on the front lines doing that, and that's certainly a huge part of it. But it's about everything that we're doing too, even as parents and what's going on in our school system, certainly those of us in Congress, in making sure we're providing the oversight and looking into the receipts and making sure that we know what's going on. It's just been crazy. We've seen some of the safety issues, of course, that have arisen from the Secret Service to some of these Boeing, is having issues with their planes, while they're safety wasn't the number one issue anymore.
Yeah.
We saw this throughout our we're dealing with Army Corps projects throughout the country and in our district, and they're taking 3 days off to go to DEI trainings and learn all about intersectionality and those kind of things. I'm like, how does this help you build things quicker?
So crazy.
Even our national parks, we're developing curriculum for kids to foist this kind of, we've got to defund these sort of things. We certainly, as Congress, have to have the backbone to do it. Thankfully, right now we have an administration to work with us, but we can't just sit on our hands over the next 4 years and expect the president to do everything. We know he will, but we've got to come behind him and codify these things into law, reduce those budgets. If this is what they're spending money on, they don't need the money, obviously.
Yes.
So we've got to rein that in. Some of these discussions I've been into on the Hill, they'll be like, well, if we do that, we have to fire people. I'm like, yes, that's the goal.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Have to sweeten the argument for me,
Yeah, no, I'm already supporting it. You don't have to convince me. That's funny. Well, I know that you and Senator Eric Schmitt are presenting this legislation respectively in the House and Senate, which is great. Did you consider calling it the Civil Rights Act of 2025? Like, why you don't need to do some other name. Get the left to vote against the Civil Rights Act. How about that?
That's a good idea. We probably should have had you on the creative team with us. We were coming up with ideas.
Yeah. Oh well. Anyway, I'm full of ideas, but sometimes I whip them out. Okay. Hey, Congressman, how are things in Congress these days? I know President Trump wants to hopefully get one or two big reconciliation packages done that are designed to advance his agenda. Do you see that happening in the Congress?
I do see it happening. We're making headway on it. I understand when you're sitting at home watching Congress, it can be frustrating because what you see out of the Republicans is what Congress is supposed to look like. And sometimes you'll see, establishment media and those kind of things make heyday of the fact that we have a deliberative body and people, all of us working to advance the America First agenda, but making sure that we have the discussions on how and what's the best way to get there. And so we're making progress. Some of us had favored a two-step process, some a one-step process.
Yeah.
For me, it's the most important thing is that we execute on whichever it is, and whatever is included in that process, we have to turn the fiscal corner. So we can't continue to add to our debt. We can't continue to run $2 trillion deficits every year and expect us to meet what is a national security crisis in our fiscal situation.
Yes. So
it's got to be dramatic in what we're doing, not only to rein in some of the crazy stuff we see coming out in the news this way. I mean, one of the arguments I've been saying, as we work on these bills is like, how about let's stop sending them money to do bad things, especially when we're talking about the Biden administration, but when it comes to turning the fiscal corner, making sure we send the message to the world and to investors and to everybody that we recognize the situation we're in. We're going to get our fiscal house in order, and for the taxpayers, we're gonna return a good ROI for what you're investing in.
So obviously, Elon Musk and his team are working on behalf of President Trump to try and cut as much spending as they can. But the president could be assisted with congressional help, right, in terms of giving him more powers to responsibly act as a fiduciary on behalf of the American people. Because right now, Congress passes out-of-control spending, and then the law really tries to limit the president from trying to save money for the American people. Do you imagine, can you envision Congress stepping up and empowering the president to save us some more money?
Yes, we certainly can, we should, and I think we will. Part of the problem is we had an administration that secrecy and deception and all these kind of things and the shell games they were playing with, and so we would ask the questions and we would not get the answers. So just for the fact that we have an administration that's willing to work with us and to bring accountability and to bring transparency, and when we go into these agencies now and we're asking the questions to find out where's the money really going, to be able to have an administration for us to be able to work with to reset these spending levels, so to speak, reset what the norm is, to what is this agency or what's this program actually supposed to be accomplishing it? Is it accomplishing those goals? If not, let's get rid of it. Let's make the adjustments necessary.
Yes.
But so it already you're seeing the benefits of it. But
and you're in a good position to manage a lot of this, Congressman. We're talking to Congressman Michael Cloud. You're on the House Appropriations and Oversight committees. I mean, those are the two committees you want to be on if you're going to assess how these agencies are spending money and whether or not they deserve the ridiculous budgets they've been using, right?
Yeah, somehow we ended up on these committees, and it's certainly been – these are the two committees that have jurisdiction over the whole federal government. So one on the spending side and one on the investigatory side. And then we're on the DOJ subcommittee on oversight as well. So it really is a unique space to be able to investigate on one side and use the tools available through the Oversight Committee, and then to bring what we're learning there into the appropriation space. And what it's kind of technical, but what a lot of people may not understand at home, in the Appropriations Committee, you can enter a sentence into a bill that has the effect of an entire piece of legislation, where you basically say, these funds shall not be used for, or we shall use these funds for such and such a thing. We had some success in really the last couple terms, getting some good, solid appropriations bills through the committees into the House floor. But of course, the Senate, with where they were, and the Biden administration wasn't letting these good bills get through. So we're obviously in a different paradigm now. We'll have the reconciliation process to deal with some of the long-term spending aspects of it, but then when we're looking at what we're doing from year to year and what we're spending these projects on, we'll definitely have a Senate that's more willing to work with us, and certainly a White House that's going to be helping us as well.
Well, it's a cool time to be in Congress. We're praying that you guys all use it very well. Congressman Michael Cloud, thank you very much. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Good to talk to you, and we need the prayers, so thank you.
We're always lifting him up. There he is, Congressman Michael Cloud from Texas. Busy on two very important committees, launching that Dismantle DEI Act today with Senator Eric Schmitt. I will say, I mean, not just because it's my idea. I think it'd be fun to force the left to confront the Civil Rights Act of 2025. Just put it in front of them, don't you think? You're going to vote against the Civil Rights Act? Now's your chance. You can be part of history. Civil rights history. You can do it. Amazing. The Democrats in Congress are insane. That's one of the takeaways from my observations of Congress. Congressman Jared Huffman is a Democrat. He was outside of the National Prayer Breakfast this morning filming a video of himself, which is something that teenagers do, not adult men usually. And he was announcing that he's for a, quote, separation of church and state. He's opposed to the prayer breakfast. I'll remind you, Barack Obama went to the prayer breakfast. Joe Biden went to the prayer breakfast. Donald Trump, of course, has gone to the prayer breakfast, including today. Jared Huffman is opposed to it now because it's Trump who is He's merging church and state. It's a dastardly deed, in the words of another congressman.
Hi, folks. I'm just getting ready to cross the street for the National Prayer Breakfast. I am not going to this event because I support it. I'm actually going to protest it.
Yeah, he's protesting prayer. That's where the Democrats are now. You know, after school Satan clubs and protesting prayer.
And I'm going to be wearing a couple of buttons to explain that. This one, Build This Wall, is about the wall of separation between church and state that our founders intended for our secular republic. And then this one says, Entering Gilead, of course, a reference to a creepy dystopic theocracy, which is the slippery slope we're heading down with events like this. Let's walk and I'll tell you more about it.
Goodness. Yeah, tell us more.
So, look, we should not...
Your ahistoric nonsense, you know. This is the same political party that used your money and gave it to religious NGOs to import millions of foreign nationals into the country. The separation of church and state might took us, right? But it's a scam. It's a total scam. And just to make sure, I literally checked out Jared Huffman's website today, and sure enough, there are multiple references to how you can use Catholic Charities as a resource to be an illegal immigrant in the United States of America. This is Mr. Separation of Church and State. We got to separate this church and state. You're not allowed to pray for your country, but you are allowed to steal money from taxpayers to import foreign nationals into it by way of religious organizations.
Be having a Christian prayer service in the sanctum of the United States Capitol, Statuary Hall.
Yes.
This is an actual
one nation under God
violation of church-state separation like we have never seen.
Which is not in the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence.
Second year in a row, Speaker Johnson has done this, and now they're doing it in open collaboration with a group called the Fellowship Foundation, which is this radical extremist group that does things like goes to Africa and supports legislation to kill gay people.
What?
Openly supports an anti-woman, anti-LGBT.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is going to be one of those rare fact checks where I don't actually know the underlying claim that he's making, but this is bullcrap. Like, the Fellowship Foundation supports going to Africa to kill gay people. That's the what?
Africa and supports legislation to kill gay people.
Oh my goodness!
And openly supports an anti-woman, anti-LGBT extreme
Be more
agenda
explicit.
here in the
What do you
United
mean?
States.
What do you
Stuff
mean?
like this complete breakdown of church-state separation is a big part of the dystopic authoritarian agenda at the heart of Donald Trump.
Who let this
and his
guy in
MAGA
Congress?
movement. And today I'm going to try to do my part to just say enough.
Jared Huffman, what have you been huffing, man? Yeah, I just looked up more information about that Christian group, the Fellowship, and your Jared Huffman a moment ago saying they're trying to kill gay people in Uganda. It was a lie. What he's lying about it. It turns out way back in 2009 or 10, Uganda had been contemplating a law that included the death penalty for gay people, and one of the members of the Fellowship was asked whether they supported it, and he said no. These fact checks, they take like 8 seconds. At any rate, there's a lot of craziness in the world. Mark Levin's going to help you cover it next. And then I'll be back tomorrow. I'm doing 6 hours. I've got the Dan Bongino show and then the Vince Coglianese show. In other words, more than enough time for you and I to chat about what's going on with the world. President Trump, by the way, just moments ago celebrating that the NCAA is protecting women's sports now at his behest. Finally.